Palestinian group Hamas has launched the biggest attack on Israel in years, killing at least 100 people in a surprise assault that combined gunmen penetrating into Israeli towns with a barrage of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip. Hundreds more have been injured. Israel have since responded with airstrikes on the densely populated Gaza Strip, killing close to 200 people. Today's attack comes against a backdrop of surging violence between Israeli and Palestinian fighters on the West Bank. Hamas says it has fired at least 5,000 rockets on Israel and are now holding 50 people hostage at the kibbutz near the border with Gaza. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel was now at war, this morning's attack comes on the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, which was also a surprise attack by a coalition of Arab countries. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Palestinians celebrated. A video obtained by Reuters showed people running through a destroyed fence that used to mark the border between Gaza and Israel. Gunshots were heard in the distance as a bulldozer broke through a portion of the fence. The surprise assault by Hamas on Saturday saw gunmen crossing the border with a heavy barrage of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip. And while Iran has praised Hamas, senior officials at the United Nations and in the United States government have condemned the attack. Malta has asked the UN Security Council to meet behind closed doors. Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, the director at RiskRecon, joins us for more. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Your reaction, firstly, to the latest developments in Israel.
Good afternoon, Alicia. Thank you very much. It's just unfortunate that this escalation is between Israelis and Palestinians. It's happening at a time when the world is not united in terms of resolving conflict. You may have seen in the last few weeks incursions and attacks by Israelis and the recent escalation. You don't see a united world in terms of dealing with the conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians. It has been building up for quite some time, but I think the last few days have seen unprecedented escalation. And I'm really worried if the Security Council would really come up with a solution that would really de-escalate the conflict.
Doctor, look, what does this then mean for the bigger Middle East and this happening at the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur? Do you think it's a coincidence?
It's just a coincidence, I think. But I think because the escalation has been building up between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and the lines of communication between the Israelis and Palestinians has been really compromised. And I hope this recent escalation would trigger some level of communication between the political leaders in both sides to try to really de-escalate this conflict and really look for permanent solutions. And I think there's been reluctance in terms of the Israelis and really the expansion that has been going on. It's not helping in de-escalating tension for Israelis to keep on occupying new territories and so on. So a really serious political intervention is required. I hope the Security Council will come up with something. But I'm just worried, Alicia, given the tension within the Security Council, if we are likely to see a unified solution in terms of how to de-escalate this tension.
And this conflict, Doctor, has created and divided many across all spheres. I mean, Iran has apparently praised Hamas. What do you make of their stance in this regard?
Well, you know, there's been in the last few days, there have been serious attacks in Syria. There's been escalation and attacks really coming up from the bomber blast that happened in Turkey. And the Israelis have been targeting Syria and targeting allies of Hamas. So the tension, it's just there. And the problem again is, do we see any possible solution to this when there was a really approachment between Iran and of course the Saudis? One had hoped that bringing in this two conflicting sect within the Islamic faith would help in terms of assisting in the conflict in Syria. And in Iraq too, the tension is building up. There's been serious attacks and so on. And it's not happening. It's not helping, Alicia. This takes place when, again, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine it's also escalating. So there's a generally global tension that is happening, which is not helping.
Doctor, look, how should then Israel respond? What are their options? I mean, we've just heard news just in that Benjamin Netanyahu has basically declared war.
Well, the Palestinians would tell you that they've been at war for quite some time because of the attacks by Israelis. And the declaration of war by Israel would not come as a surprise to a lot of Palestinians because they've been subjected to serious restrictions and indiscriminate attack by the Israelis too. But I think it's unfortunate that the civilians in both sides of the divide, in terms of this escalation, are the ones who are paying the heaviest price in this conflict.
All right. And very quickly, Doctor, I mean, there's been a lot of infighting and tension amongst the Arab countries. Nobody's really innocent here. The Saudi Arabians have called on Hamas to stop with the attack. What is your reaction to that very quickly?
Well, you know, Israel has made a lot of inroads diplomatically into the Arab world. And the Arab world and the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, when he was at the UN, he addressed the US audience to say they are willing to really start some form of a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Israel and to really restore full diplomatic relations. But they will need tensions, they will need certain conditions to be met, essentially to create conditions that are conducive for the Arab world to justify this.
All right.
The Israelis have had inroads in terms of the UAE, the re-established diplomatic relations, and one had hoped that that kind of approach would help in terms of dialogue.
All right.
But I don't think it's helping. I think the right wings within the Israeli establishment also are not helping.
All right,
to
Doctor.
really de-escalate this tension.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much. That is Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, RiskRecon Director, giving us some analysis on the Hamas attack on Israel.